This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Welcome. This is Novo Manna, and welcome to another session of the Technology Review Council. Today, we're very pleased to have, again, a returning guest. We have Ganesh Iyer and Ashish Bhatnagar from Dotin, who are going to show us the newest, shall we say, output from the Dotin platform that is all about resilience. So, Ashish, you are on, sir.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Noah, for the introduction. And thank you all for your time today. Very, very happy to be here from the Dotin side. And just a quick intro, myself here, Ashish, help support the business development and strategic partnership development here at Dotin. I've been with the firm for about 2 years. And prior to that, the last 7 years or so, I've been working with several high growth AI focused startups. And my passion is kind of convergence of that human element and technology as it pertains to solving some key business problems. That's what brings me here today. And we also are joined by our founder, Ganesh Iyer. Ganesh, if you want to just give us a quick intro, and then we can
Sure.
jump
Thank
into
you,
the
and thank you, Noah, for this opportunity. My name is Ganesh, founder and CEO of Dotin. Very excited to be part of this session, and very excited to share something that is truly solving some of our customers' pain point. And we felt this is something that we would love to share with a broader group. If this can add value to some of these uncertain situations that everyone is going through, if we can add some certainty to your business through this kind of metrics, that's what we are here for, sharing some of the knowledge base. So very excited to be here. Thank you, Ashish, for driving this conversation. I will be taking all the questions on the chat, so feel free to ask any questions. If there are any questions, you can ask through the conversations, or you can put it in the chat window. I can answer those as Ashish would share some of the slides. Back to you, Ashish.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Ganesh. Really appreciate your support. And Nov, if we're ready, I can go ahead and start the screen share.
Absolutely. Please do.
Okay, and I'll just minimize the camera here for latency's sake. Starting the screen share, and certainly let me know if you can see it here.
Yes, we do. We got it.
Fantastic.
I would, yeah, there you go. Perfect.
Okay, great. So again, Ashish from Dotin here, guys, and very excited to be here and kind of speak to you about a key offering that we're bringing to market. One that I hope is relevant based on some of the trends I'll share here in the next few moments. But a little bit about Dotin. So we've been around since 2014, but the first 4 years or so, 5 years, we're building, base models and really driving the R&D aspects of our technology, and that incorporated core competencies of neuroscience, psychology, and mathematicians, and basically bringing that together through machine learning models. And then the last 2 years have been in market and solving some pretty incredible pain points with some pretty key lighthouse customers. We've been very lucky actually to have gone through several key accelerators and programs that really have helped us kind of narrow the focus, build an enterprise scale worthy product, but more than that, really kind of learn from some of the best out there. And a few of these we've had the opportunity to engage with overseas. For example, PwC in the UK allowed us to get into one of their GovSpace programs where the efficacy of solution was something that was pretty critical. Plug and play both here in the US and in Japan has really enabled us to connect with some incredible companies and grow out that particular channel, if you will. We've also come through Salesforce Accelerate recently, and that's helped us to kind of hone our solution towards sales leaders building resilient and future-facing teams. The technology itself, as I mentioned, has been in development for several years. So we have been able to patent and also publish thought leadership papers along some of these key initiatives in terms of AI and some of the patents that drive our IP. But also we've been through some prestigious programs, including the Capstone program, which Columbia University, through a grant through the government, basically is able to leverage some key technology players and produce some pretty cool insights with some of their graduating classes. And so we were lucky to participate on multiple fronts there. And really the three pillars that underpin, our technology and our solutions focus on sourcing and screening. We have the ability to very quickly and accurately help to identify traits and help to align those traits within candidate groups, and that can be done passively or actively through a 1-minute personality assessment. We also have the ability to leverage our AI capabilities to help organizations upskill. That's, bridge the aspirational gap in terms of using a smart recruiter kind of smart advisor functionality that we can help match talent to their aspirational goals. But most importantly, today, I'd like to talk to you guys about our analytics package, and specifically about resilience and how we can leverage our insights package to solve some key issues. The outlook today, of course, is one that everybody's focused on. It's not necessarily clear where things are going, but one thing that's certainly important is that in order to make any decision, you must, first start with understanding the landscape, a baseline, if you will. So I'd like to focus first on how to kind of get some clarity with regard to the workforce to make some of these decisions. And digital transformation has been the hot topic, for some time with future of work and other initiatives. And, started with the top-down kind of direction where even chief digital officers and roles were created to help enable this transformation. But I think nothing has compressed that timeline faster than what we've seen recently with COVID. In fact, this stat here comes from Ask Annie, which is monitoring, the adoption of certain technologies and video conferencing and collaborative apps. But if you look from March 1st to the 15th, there's a 90% uptick in terms of adoption of technology. So that investment and strategy was very clear. In fact, 74% of surveyed CEOs, and this is a survey that was put out by Gartner, they plan to keep their workforce in part or in whole remote. So the new norm is certainly work from home. And with that said, even 32% of organizations are trying to find ways to bring in some variable types of contract employees and other project-based initiatives. And this is, with regards to trying to, save money and try to bring in a better alignment to outcome. And beyond that, based on today's social landscape, there's a lot of issues that are top of mind, both to employee groups and to leadership. And investments being made in terms of finding opportunities to level the playing field, to find bias, to address these issues are very important and top of mind. So even beyond hiring, in the next 5 years, if we look at the chart here, we see that about 87% of the skills that a worker needs or that your talent needs would effectively be obsolete or need to be kind of bolstered. So 87% of these skills to address the gap would be a pretty massive investment, for any organization. And in fact, if we start to break this down a little bit more, if we look at some of the top traits that are needed, they're based on things like personality, like cognitive abilities, values, more so than technical skills, which of course are important, but there's another dimension here to look at. To get through COVID-19, and this is a report based on McKinsey, one of the key components to get through and to come out outside of this transition and be ready for the future is to screen talent for things like resilience, for some cognitive type attributes that they might need, looking at EQ, and of course things like adaptability as a value. Looking at these types of attributes become very important when we start thinking of maintaining the remote life cycle management of future talent. And some of the trends that we can speak to today would be things like looking at remote working as it's becoming the norm, the adoption of AI technologies and other talent level analytics in terms of understanding the workforce, investment in terms of looking for ways to remove bias or analyze where there could be bias, and of course, a massive push in terms of reskilling and upskilling with respect to some of the future skills needed. So the impacts that we're seeing today within, and these are coming from customers and partners that we're working with, but the humanizing of work, or even humanizing of the resume in the early stages of talent lifecycle becomes very important. Personality insights are becoming very critical to understand some of these attributes on scale, even within an organization, but also understanding things like resilience versus efficiency. How somebody can be ready for uncertainty in the future rather than how quickly they can perform a task, and coming together with an authentic alignment with regards to the culture and value for an organization. These things become very important to not only be proactive about in terms of planning, but also to, even before that, to measure. So where Dotin can step in, and specifically with packages like our Resilience Insights package, would kind of tag into a lot of these key points. With our technology focused around work from home, our talent analytics, and our ability to then drive certain outcomes in terms of ideal culture and ideal models that we can pull. This clearly lines up with the opportunity that we see, where understanding the resilience of remote working, understanding the attributes around your workforce through tools like AI becomes a critical trend to move forward, not only from a standpoint of planning, but also from a standpoint of execution. So let's take a step back and talk through what is resilience. So one point to call out here is that the different models that underpin our technology at Dotin are based on industry standards. So one I'd like to mention is ONET. ONET, if you haven't experienced ONET, it's through the Department of Labor. It's a database that has different attributes along things like soft skills, hard skills needed for a job. And so one of the other attributes they do point out are workplace values. So the value sets, and there's several of these workplace values. What we did is we looked through to identify, which of these industry standard values kind of line up with resilience. And this was done with our psychologists on our team. So things like adaptability and flexibility, cooperation, independence, persistence, self-control, and stress tolerance. These become the key attributes that kind of go into our resilience model. So another way of looking at it would be members of your team that kind of express these qualities the probable outcome would be that they would do well working remotely because the resilience would be higher. So now that we've kind of defined what is resilience, let's talk a little bit about how we might solve this problem. The first call out here is that, as I mentioned, the Dotin models are kind of built upon industry standards. So mentioning ONET again, this database allows us to kind of have a taxonomy, if you will, of all the jobs out there and leverage some ideals to those standards. We also take a look at how somebody consumes information, and learning style becomes very important when you start looking at team members. A lot of times the disconnect in terms of even training and onboarding can be based on how information is presented, and then how that information is actually perceived or acted upon. So some of the insights there are underpinned under the Gartner's learning styles, which have been out there in terms of educators and others have studied these models. When it comes to the workplace personality, we look at Holland's occupational model, which helps to predict some of the professional characteristics in the workplace. And by using these models, we can help to understand how individuals may align to a particular job with regards to the softer traits as well. And so with those insights, what we're able to do in the span of 2 weeks is come in initially and work within an organization in terms of understanding the critical pain points and the scope of an engagement. The intention would be to then go out and assess a certain group of employees to come back with quick ways to gain these personality insights with our 1-minute personality assessment, for example, which, by the way, we will be sharing a link to have all of you folks try this. This is one of our claim to fame, if you will. And with this quick checkpoint, we can come back with some key insights, which we'll get into in just a moment. So a quick commitment for the actual employee group, and then a data analysis process where we're going to synthesize these insights into tangible outcomes, including executive level summary and some customized next steps in terms of what our results are able to kind of yield. An example of the executive level outcome here would be this slide. So not only do you have some summaries and custom insights, but if we take a look at this chart here, what we're looking at are our business units across across two parameters, resilience and collaboration. And these are both very important because by understanding the qualities within these groups, we can make certain decisions in terms of how to plan for our overall workforce and performance. So for example, from a standpoint of this green quadrant, these units, business units, are higher on the resilience and collaboration scale, so therefore would be good candidates for remote work. From a standpoint of the second quadrant here, you might see folks that are higher on the resilience, but maybe lower on the collaboration in terms of individual contributors. On the red side, you might see units that need some more scaffolding. And what you'll find in these reports are not only the data, but also some of the analysis and recommendations into what to do next. So very powerful on a high level. And again, fully customized based on the outcomes of our engagement. And this gets presented within a deeper set of insights with our executive summary, where you'll have not only the key callouts and the attributes for your population, for the employees that we're looking at, for the scope of the engagement, of course, but also some tangible next steps, and even some guidance in terms of who you might bring back to the office, for example. The folks that might particularly need some support, and what type of support might you bring in terms of project management or even other leadership type of support. And this is where we work closely with a consultative approach to really make sure that the outcomes are driving results and aligned to your key pain points as well. One of the other attributes that we look at is with regards to team synergy. And this is really important right now because in the virtual world, working together is definitely new for a lot of folks. And not only that, being productive and working together without the breakdown of some of the processes as the benchmarks before COVID has definitely been a challenge. So by looking at the synergy and on a heat map level, we can quickly identify which units, teams, whatever the structure might be, but which units might actually need some more support. And with that, we will drive some insights to those points. And as we kind of look within and drill down, we can actually start to find, not only from a standpoint of the business units, but actually start to find the individuals that we want to focus on and gain certain insights into how to best engage with them to maintain productivity and retention. An example of the outcome that you'll get would be detailed insights for each business unit. You'll understand the top learning styles, working styles, the workplace values that an individual unit gravitates towards. So that could help in terms of planning different strategies with regards to both learning, onboarding, communication, and even understanding what incentives might work best for them. We can also take a look at compensation and benefit packages that might work for this group. So there's a lot of proactive insight that can be used here. So beyond the ability to drive these insights, we've also been able to work through some key channel partners who've really vetted us in terms of data privacy and even efficacy of our solution. But a few points to call out: that all of our data is GDPR compliant. We're NCCPA, which is here in California for the California Consumer Protection Act. From the start, we are not a company that collects data and is in the, and we typically will house individual deployments, all personal information in a unique location for each of our customers. And some of the key customers that we've worked through across many different industries, both enterprise customers, both here in the US, in Canada, and even India and Singapore, for example. But we've also been able to partner with some key channels that have gotten us into some bigger brands in terms of hospitality and even some of the public sector as well, which we've been able to work with one of our partners here to get to support 911 operators looking for post-hire assessments to help understand workplace attributes around their population. So it's a very horizontal application, if you will, of customers, and we are able to support through our technology the entire life cycle of this new virtual talent development, from real-time screening to customized onboarding mentorship programs by understanding like-minded connections and learning styles, building synergistic teams and trying to understand proactively where opportunities are for coaching, and also bringing out incentive programs that might cater best to the personality types and desires of an employee group. But beyond that, you can use AI-driven technologies to automate the models in terms of who your next rising stars and top performers might be. You can look for opportunities to rotate talent into new opportunities and jobs, and understand what types of curriculum you might actually build. So the engagement with Dotin is something that we like to say is long-term from that standpoint. So the key point in life is, of course, disrupt or be disrupted. And we hope that our technology allows organizations to be on that cutting edge. And thanks for the support here, No, but also do want to call out that as we are able to have some secondary conversations with you guys, we can certainly offer a 75% discount to this group and specific to this relationship. So for the first clients that we are able to engage with, and you can reach out directly to myself or Ganesh here for any follow-ups to that point. But more than that, thank you guys so much for the time. We will be following up with you with this deck and the link for our assessment, which is also here on this QR. So again, would be a part of the deck that's shared. And with that said, Nov, I'll hand it back over to you, or perhaps we can open up with any questions.
Sure. No, thank you very much. And there, I'll probably drag you down through some of the more detailed perspective of the output. But let me ask if there's some general questions right now, and either the Dotin platform, its applicability and validity, if you will, because they've done a lot there, and from the standpoint of some of the output. I know you've got a couple of slides there. We'll certainly get that in a little deeper. Well, I see, Rob, you've got a question out there about a case study. So Ashish or Ganesh, anyone that you've been working with in this resilience situation, what are you seeing, and what are these people getting out of this process, or what are they learning in using Dotin?
Yeah, this is Rob. I'd love to, step me through an example, because I was thinking about today's present environment and thinking of examples of organizations where I could imagine this working, but also thinking of examples of organizations where resilience is not necessarily an asset. Let's put it that way. So I'll let you kind of take it from there.
Sure. Ashish or Ganesh, you're bringing up the chart I was kind of hoping to see as well. So yeah, let's take us through this as a chart first, and then maybe you can then relate that specifically to a use case where this has become the output of something, and what is being done about it. What is it really saying to us?
Sure, absolutely. And I'll certainly take a stab here, Ganesh, and if you'd like to add anything, please at any point, love your insights as well. So what this chart is showing here is the ability to understand and answer the question with the workforce, who should stay remote, who should come back to the office. For example, this is a talent analytics output, and the data that we're looking at here are data points around collaboration and resilience. And to take a step back, our models are able to understand a couple factors around synergy that build in the collaboration within these units. So we're able to measure the qualities that by understanding the needs of customers. So we started by just speaking to through partners and to end customers to find out, what are organizations looking to do? And most organizations were trying to understand on a top-down level, what to do with different business units and employee groups. So based on these insights, we can kind of club together the different business units and identify where we have the ability to either double down and support the units that are most likely to succeed, where we also can take a look at, say, the folks that are more on the lower side of the spectrum with regards to resilience. Now, these are folks that you might want to bring back to the office if you could. So you can focus on the scaffolding needed to support things like attrition and lack of performance. And the ability for us to, double click in to see where we can actually work with individuals is also something that, could support the practitioners, whereas the ability to take a step back and look at the overall landscape is a great way to support the executive decision. So, the first step to make decisions in terms of case study, the first engagements that we had were mainly to baseline, to understand. So we would take a business unit, say of, 100 to 500 folks or so, and just understand the variables within that business unit. And then we would also start to look at different teams across the organization and start to help drive those decisions in terms of, who you bring back to the office, for example, which business units would be good candidates to leave remote if you had that ability or flexibility. So the key point is that the outcomes were always customized and are always customized to the key pain points within this type of an equation.
So,
I hope that answers.
Yeah, Ashish, I think, can you maybe relate that to a specific client? And I certainly would have some questions around about the process and such, but maybe take one of your recent clients in this resilience perspective and said, okay, here's what they were struggling with. Here's their business. Here's what they were struggling with, and how did we resolve that in going through the process?
So I can take that question if okay with you, Ashish.
Absolutely, Ganesh, please.
And I've also shared in the chat, probably with Ashish offline, in terms of a report that we generally create as a part of the resilience analysis. And if you can take to the diagram which talks about the process, Ashish, if you have it here in the slides, how much time does it take to go through this exercise? It's a 2 weeks initiative that we take with respect to an enterprise. Let me know, Ashish, if you can take us to that specific slide, and I can then walk through some of the examples of recent deployments. So in general, what we are doing here is we are not with this process. It's more about highlighting where the issue is and sharing some guidance, what can be the potential next steps. And this is so brand new because this basically is happening as we speak. We have some major deployments going on because of the NDA. I cannot tell you the names, but it's one of the largest in the top 3, I would say, consulting business. The entire organization is going through it right now. And similar to that, there is also one of the 4th largest IT service industry guys are also implementing this across the organization as we speak. And what we are trying to do in this process is not solve the problem because we don't even know what the problem is to begin with. What we know is that there is quite a bit of uncertainty. There is quite a bit of change in your day-to-day work activities. And companies have already started seeing severe disruption with respect to project deliverabilities. That's one common example. And what the companies are trying to understand is that even if they put the best infrastructure, they give the direct Wi-Fi access to the employees. They may even sponsor the desk. They may sponsor all the infrastructure. Many times the team members are not able to meet the expectation. And they're trying to figure out why and what is the best way, first to identify where the root cause is and how do you mitigate it beyond just the skills or infrastructure perspective. And that's where this conversation started. And as Ashish shared through the couple of slides, the findings from McKinsey, the findings from Gartner's, the findings from Forrester's are as early as just a month ago. They published these reports. It's not that these have been around for a longer time. So this is something that we have developed to mitigate some of the pain points of the customers. And as we are developing this, in some cases, we are already seeing some solutions that would be coming out as a part of the process. So as a part of this 2 weeks process, Ashish, if you can share the report with respect to maybe the detailed report, the summary report that we go through. I have put it in the Telegram chat for you. If you can maybe download the final walkthrough report. This is basically one of the reports that is given along with the quick insight report, which is a one-page summary view. So what this report that Ashish would be sharing is one of the sample case studies that was done again with the they are in the top 3 consulting accounting firms, and this is done for the entire organization. And what we did was very simple. If you go through the slide, this is something that we present to every customer at the end of 2 weeks. We explain to them the process, and the way the process works is understanding what are the ideal models that are required for us to create. If you go to the previous slide, Ashish, what are the ideal models that are required for us to create? What is the ideal candidate in for a particular position in terms of uncertain situations aligning to ONET? We also look for individual assessments as a part of the baselining, and using these 2 data points, we then come back with insights that can help the organization take potential next steps. And there are multiple ways the next steps can go. So if you go to slide 4 onwards, Ashish, what we start with is at a high level team summary view. Ashish, if you're able to, yeah. Okay, slide 5. Yeah. So what we show is basically for a team of, in this case, it was a team of, it was a pretty big organization. They wanted to understand what is the working style of this individual, what is the learning style of this individual, so that they can know if the working and learning style is something that would be aligning to the uncertainties and the changes that are seen on the business. So we are able to understand at the organization level, what are the top 3 working styles aligning to Holland, what are the top 3 aligning to gardeners. If you go to the next slide, Ashish, we can also identify what kind of incentive programs may be required to motivate this kind of individual working from home. How should you basically connect with them? What are the incentives that would really work for them beyond monetary benefits? And what kind of personal growth that you should look for as a part of making sure that they are connected to the organization. As we give this at a high level, we then deep dive into slide 7, which talks about for the organizations that participated in this analysis in slide 7, Ashish.
There's just a 2-second delay here on the chain. Just apologize for that, guys.
Okay. It's still coming up.
Yeah, it's still coming up here on the next slide. We try to.
I think we're all being overworked, but I think our equipment is following suit.
Yeah, there it is. Hopefully.
So in this case, we were able to plot the same graph that Ashish was sharing with respect to, hey, where does the team stand with respect to resilience? And the reason we picked up resilience as a very critical factor, as we went through the analysis, it was becoming very important that as you are coming out of this uncertain situations, your fundamental way of working is going to drastically change. And as a part of knowing if you can blend into this new norm, resilience would be one of the prime factor from the world of psychology. And first thing that we did was analyze where the baselining is for every teams. And not only do that, in slide 8, we give specific recommendation for each of these zones. How should you read from the analysis perspective, and what are the potential recommendations for any of the teams falling in the 4 quadrants. But as we provide this, I think it's very important to provide very prescriptive outcomes. Some of the prescriptive outcomes that came out of this exercise in slide 9 is giving them a better understanding of, at a high level, again, for a team. I'll just wait for the slide 9 to come in so that I can tie my conversation to, yeah. So as you can see here, this is basically giving at a high level, how does it look like with respect to the team members taking up the role when they are working virtually. And when they are working virtually, also looking for some of the critical parameters that makes them productive, as they are not able to meet with each other. So there are two metrics that we look for: resilience and collaboration. And along with that, we also provide insights to the hiring manager or the organizations in terms of the change in behavior that they should consider to make sure that people are comfortable in this new norm. That's what the slide 10 is. And slide 11 is basically giving them a little more insights in terms of how should they take this further in terms of the analysis. In this particular case, we recognize that when they are looking for people, they are specifically focusing on skills. They are not even considering some of the soft skills that are very required for people to be successful as you're working virtually in an uncertain situation. So one of the suggestion was consider cultural alignment as a part of your screening, as a part of understanding the employees, so that you can align some of the outcomes specific to these values as well. And the one of the bullet points that they were looking for is, hey, we want to bring back people back to the workforce. Can you tell us how should we proceed? In this case, we were very prescriptive in even giving them insights who should come back to the office right now and who can be delayed in this process. So this really helps them to make informed decisions. So this is more of tactical. The one part was tactical, one part was analytics. And beyond the analytics, if you go back to the presentation slides, Ashish, the tree that we were showing, end-to-end flow, there are many ways companies have started taking these analytics to the next level. So as an example, in the same two big firms, they are looking at taking this analytics to identify what are the skill gaps with respect to this new norm, and how do you not only look for fulfilling the gaps using the training curriculum. We have machine learning models that can sit on top of your training curriculum and identify which courses would fulfill the gaps in real time. But at the same time, they are trying to identify through those gaps what are the courses that are not even in their repository that they should go out and start building, so that they are ahead of the curve and they are not caught off guard as these transitions are happening at a rapid pace. So I'll just pause here to see if that kind of answered your question, or happy to give you more insights offline if there is something more that you'd like to know, Rob.
So Ganesh, this is Nov. So I appreciate you taking us through the process, and what strikes me is, I mean, we're used to kind of work patterns because of how we worked pre-COVID, if you will. So we've been matching the workforce coming in to that work style, if you will, that environment, and quite literally we know what the work looks like, and we know how we fit the people with it. All of this changed because of COVID, not only because of where we're working from, but the kind of work that's being done. And I guess my question to you is are the managers or the senior folks who are looking at the output of this stuff recognizing that not only do they need to perhaps adapt themselves to upskill the workforce, but potentially, and probably not more than potentially, probably have to change the way in which we're working. In other words, change the work itself. In other words, let's really start taking it down to a very lower level and say, hey, Nova does this real well, but he doesn't do all these other things. Let's move that to somebody else who does that and does it well, and let's give Nova this other stuff to do. Because it's raising us to our potentials as individuals. We all want to be successful, but maybe not some of the things I do that I don't do as well as I should be. And so I think I think, as you said earlier, Ashish, COVID is changing everything. It's accelerating digitalization, but it's also changing how we work, where we work, why we work, if you will. And I'm wondering if you're seeing the lights turning on, if you will, at the senior management level, saying we need to change the way in which we're doing stuff.
I think it's happening, but it's happening slowly. The one thing that is seen common across all the customer base right now is everyone is trying to grapple with where do they begin with, because there is so much fundamental shift with respect to the workforce that they are trying to see where do they even begin. And especially for the folks who haven't even started this journey of digitization, it's a big shock for them, because now they are kind of forced to do things that they have never done in their workforce, right? So it's definitely I would say the awareness is there in terms of the transition. It's happening. It may take another solid 6 to 12 months before we see that happening across different spectrums in the industry.
Right. And quite literally, it certainly strikes me that, as this works through, if I start your process at the front end, maybe I'm starting to bring the right people in for the right type of work that needs to be done and placing them, if you will, either remotely or whatever the case may be, even in an office. I'm going to think about the two things that really seem to be stuck in a place, and that's manufacturing, because I'm working a piece of machinery, or I'm, let's say, like a retail store, which seems to be changing, or a restaurant. So in other words, I can't take my work and do it elsewhere. Do you see this being applicable to something that's like a manufacturing environment? And if so, if you have got a client like that, I'd love to hear what's the thinking behind that one. Is that part of my workforce should be away from here because I can do that, but others have to be here? And how do I change that work, per se, or how I communicate with them or what I do with them? I'm curious what your thoughts are on that.
I think manufacturing and anything which is more blue collar, hands-on, it's going to stay as is. It's very difficult to fundamentally change the entire process line and make it virtual. That's impossible to happen. Where this transition would be seen as more for white collar, more for sales oriented roles, where previously they had to go and meet the customers. Nowadays they are very comfortable just being in one place and they can get a lot more work done. Definitely the element of look and feel is not there, but many sales guys are getting comfortable in their shoes. Same with marketing, same with operations, same with customer service. Less on manufacturing, I would say. Blue collar, where it's more hands-on, it's going to stay as is. People will come back to the workforce, and in that situation, it's important to identify their resilience more from not the professional, but more on the personal side, because I'm sure that there is a lot more changes that are happening on the personal side, and it's very important to identify who may be impacted in their personal life, so that you keep a closer eye to those employees. Professionally, it may be status quo again in the next maybe 6 months as we see the vaccination coming back to life.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and as you mentioned, you're even looking at things like possible motivators and reward mechanisms that would be more appealing to the individual based on, who they are and how they react to things and so on. You talked about stress tolerance. To your point, my personal life could be in absolute chaos, and my work life is okay, but that is going to affect my work life. There's just no way around it. I will mention to the audience, we've seen a lot of different reward mechanisms in the last couple of weeks. I suspect in the long run that may be an interesting and growing business in its own right, because we rewarded people by doing things like company picnics or things at the office type of stuff, beer on Fridays with pizza or whatever. That doesn't happen now, and so the motivators are shifting. And I suspect, Ganesh, I should sit down and show you some of these other motivators so you could recommend them to some of your clients and that. But yeah, it's the world of work is truly changing out. Folks, questions for Ganesh and Ashish as well. Any perspectives of this? I would like, if you don't mind, coming back, Ashish, to that grouping, if you will, of the different units and the breakouts. When you have taken a particular unit and broken it apart that way, can you talk a little bit about what that shows on because what you're doing is you are truly assessing the individual, truly. And so you've got a very microcosm of information about a piece of a unit. How are you doing that? I noticed that you had, like, say, all of engineering needs to be brought back to the office, but as a unit, that might be the case. But what about the individuals within that? Are you guys assessing at that level, and is that meaningful?
Great question, Nov. And so, it starts with the individual, right? And it starts with the assessment process. So using our 1-minute personality assessment, for example, across the individuals in that group, what the panel on the left hand is representing is the average of that particular group. So as we're first baselining and making decisions, right, we want to start at that 30,000-foot view. But when it comes down to tactics and when it comes down to actually, engaging with individuals, practitioners, managers need to get in with that granular level insight, because if not, the maintaining the the particular average, or looking for outliers in a business unit, or simply just addressing the entire unit because of the average can be done by just actually opening up, double clicking in, seeing the individuals, and then we will give the insights on an individual level if that's what's asked of us. But the system will also allow for this level of unclustered view, so you can kind of dive in and see where everybody fits. It just depends on the most appropriate outcome for the business. Is it looking at the overall movement and strategy and planning of our business units, or is it building individual strategies with our direct reports?
Mm-hmm. Now, you also had, and again, I'm familiar with your product, so I'm going to ask you the loaded question, the team synergies. If you could explain that a little bit better, because that has value across any dimension. If I'm putting, let's say I'm thinking about putting a project team together specifically for a project. Again, the individual perspectives, how does this look and what does that mean when I'm looking at this chart?
Absolutely. So this heat map is looking at the overall synergy based on one of our models. And so we're looking at attributes around people that are not lookalikes or cookie cutters. Rather, we're trying to understand the compatibility. So we'll understand the dominant traits of an individual and also map to where those sympathetic or compatible qualities might fit. So if you can find another individual who has those qualities, there's a synergistic component, and this can drive things like increased diversity of thought, better outcome in terms of a project, because, oftentimes if there's good communication within the team and good collaboration, the byproduct is just going to be efficiency. But here we're looking at this heat map from standpoint of business units, right? They're groups or teams. But you can also look at this and again, click through and dive in where you can see individuals within a team. So this can be as tactical in that sense, where you can look at two individuals as they overlap. And again, we're looking at synergistic attributes. So if you find where, for example, in the lighter shades here, you'll find probabilistic lower synergy, here you can dive in and start to come up with strategies in terms of understanding the way that, say, there's a different learning style. So you might incorporate a different communication methodology for that project. The intention is looking at individuals or teams on with a synergy model, so looking at both the dominance and compatibility attributes within that group, and then aligning that to the right outcome, i.e. if you know that there's synergistic teams, maybe you don't focus as much on those folks and you focus on where the resources need to be spent on places proactively, where you can use coaching and things like that to help turn the trend.
Right. Yeah, and to your point earlier about you don't want a whole bunch of people all the same. You lose the diversity of what I consider the diverse of thought and perspective. And as a result of that, you don't really sometimes get the innovation you'd hoped for. So I like the idea that, we celebrate the diversity, but we try to find the common ground where we're in communication and learning and so on. You did mention a mentorship program, and you kind of skidded over that one, and I want to stop you back there. Talk a little bit, are you having any of your clients using this in identifying a mentor-mentee situation, which I think has a great deal of bearing on communication and learning styles?
Absolutely. I mean, on a personal note, I have been so lucky in my career to have great mentors, and there's no way I could have done, just even navigated without that. And so the ability to understand and connect like-minded mentees with mentors is a component that's been brought in by several of our customers on from standpoint of even in universities. We've also even helped find students like-minded mentors as well. And so the model is understanding where there's probable synergy in terms of the communication styles, the learning styles, and the rest of that model, where you can now start to find folks within the organization who, for that limited time that you get with the mentor, you're hopefully maximizing that throughput and just building a relationship is what we're hoping for. So that's what several of our customers have done within leadership development, and pairing that with the next rising star, which is basically using a prioritization based on top performers. So if you have a group of folks that are top performers, we can start to find people that could be similar. So there's a lot of nurturing in that regard in terms of finding that talent, nurturing and bringing the folks that lead with this natural talent that may not be visible yet in their body of work, for example.
Right. And I'm seeing an awful lot of intern programs now. I'm not sure how those are going to be run because we're not going to campuses to go find the people for the internships. But folks, I'll let you know we will be seeing a program that brings interns from different universities to corporate groups. We'll see them well 2 weeks from now. But in terms of the intern, we have assumed that the intern will just be placed in a place to go do a job. I think it sounds like a subset of the mentorship program would really work very well. The intern gets tremendous value out of that internship. We get what we want out of the intern in terms of their capabilities and their skill sets and communication. So it strikes me that that might be a very good, interesting thing. You guys should be at our meeting for that one too. Just listen to that. Anybody out there have any other questions or perspective or certainly feedback? I know Ganesh and Ashish would be very happy to hear your thoughts. If there's something you think that needs to be looked at a little bit more closely, or maybe shall we say, not changed, but you're skeptical about it. I will say I personally went through this, and as I mentioned at the start, and printed off a report in the early stages, handed it to my wife, and she thought I had been writing this because it was all about me, and it sounded just like me. So I had to understand about the magic in here, and I'll call it a little bit magic. It is very, very telling. I would encourage you all, if you get a chance to go out to the URL, use that QR symbol, or go out and if you will, go through the 1 minute test. It's that easy. It's very interesting, and what comes back is pretty interesting, I think, as well. I'd love to hear from you if you do that and disagree with what you get, because again, I think that's the kind of stuff that Ashish and Ganesh would like to hear, where you are disagreeing with what's coming back. We're only going to learn if it's right, wrong, or otherwise by having you tell us yay or nay. Any questions, any thoughts, any perspectives anyone would like to share? It's open mic time. Well, I guess not. Well, then, and I will say at this juncture, again, Ganesh, Ashish, thank you very much for joining us. I'm going to look for the next version of whatever Dotin's doing, and we'll drag you back in here, and you can show us. But as you're making some progress, would you be kind enough to keep us apprised? Let me know, and I'll pass that out to the rest of the TRC about what are some of the really substantial gains some of your clients are getting out of this process. I think we're going to be in this situation for quite some time.
Likewise, thank you so much for your time. It's a pleasure to be here, guys, and looking forward to participating in more of these events.
Sounds good. All right, everyone. Stay well. Enjoy the long weekend for those of you here in the States, and those of you who are not in the States, come on down south here and enjoy another 3-day weekend. Everyone stay well. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you, everybody.